Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're here with the last installment of my palette tournament round 1. So if you haven't checked out my last 2 videos, please go and do that, especially the first one in the series, which went up a couple of days ago, 2 videos ago for me, because then I discussed kind of more in detail about this mini project, or it's not a project, but like mini little series. But ultimately, I am kind of leaving the power in you guys' hands this year when it comes to my panel palette for 2026. I am letting you guys vote on my palettes, the ones that I selected, which is about half of my collection. And I'm letting you guys choose what to pan for next year. So again, I've already done 2 installments in this series where I'll talk about 7 palettes in each video. So I've already gone through 14 options and we have the final 7 today. From this video here, my top 4 is going to move on to round 2. So please do go ahead at the end of this video to leave your votes or vote, whichever you want to do, down below, and I will give you guys a week or 2 weeks whenever I get time to film this video or like the next round to vote. So make sure to do it as soon as you can, and then I will post the round 2. I believe I will post it at the beginning of like the first couple of days of December, with again the options that went on to round 2. So I'm going to jump into the video and the options for today, but before I do that, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I would love to have you in the family. Let's jump into the video. So just as in the previous parts of the series, I am going to go through them kind of in brand order. There's a couple palettes in here that I only have, well, there's only one brand, but there's one brand that I only have one palette of, which I'll talk you through later, of course. But yeah, these are kind of like the remaining palettes where it's like 1 or 2 of them in the brands. And we're going to kick off with probably the most colorful palettes on the whole list, and that is this one here. This palette's a little bit scary for me to include, not because I wouldn't enjoy panning it. Well, I would enjoy panning it, but it's 2 reasons why this one scared me. This is the Club Nebula palette from Kaleidos. It looks like this. So as you can see, it does have a lot of colors. It's also quite a lot deeper than some of the other palettes that I have talked about. It does have like 5 shades on the far right that is quite deep, but they are so colorful and still shades that I really do enjoy. But yeah, one of the reasons why I'm scared to pan this one is because it's so colorful and also running a little bit deeper. But the second thing is that this was limited edition and it is no longer available, and it was quite hard for me to get this one. I tried to get it when it was first launched, but it sold out so fast. And this is the collaboration with with Kaleidos, and I got this one on the restock, which I was so grateful for. But I feel like this one is getting a little bit older, and it's now not the palette that I need to have in my collection the same as I used to. Yes, there are some unique shades in here, especially Gravity, but I do think it has similar shades to it in my singles, although not exact. And the shimmers used aren't as good as some of my indie shimmers, so I will enjoy panning them because they are probably better than a lot of the shimmers in the other palettes that I am considering panning, but they're not as good as some of the indie shimmers. I do already have quite a lot of pans in here in all of the shimmers, so that would help me, and I feel like I would be able to get through all of the shimmers for sure. I would also try to get through, when it comes to matte, at least Naru and Gravity, and hopefully like Rock Copper as well. But the shades 7 of 9, Queen of Blades, Void, Cylon, and Red Giant would probably be a little bit harder. But yeah, I haven't tried to pan any of Kaleidos mattes or anything like that in the past, so I don't know. I mean, not even shimmers to completion either, but I don't think these pans are super deep, so maybe I would be able to go through more. But it is definitely a palette where I feel like I can complete a lot of it, but maybe not all of the palette. But it's definitely a palette that would be very exciting for me to pan, although again a bit scary. And I think I haven't seen anyone else pan this palette, so it would be quite fun for me to try to do. But yeah, I don't know how successful I would be with the colorful shades though. But if you think about it, a lot of these I can use less color shades with more neutral tones. And these 2 are like the only really bright colors. I guess this kind of corally shade is also a bit brighter. And that's also something that I would try to pan to completion, by the way. But for me, this one is a slightly more kind of easier to incorporate into neutral looks. So yeah, let me know. But that is option number 1 for this video. Option number 2 is also from Kaleidos, but this one is definitely a different palette for sure. And that is this one right here, which is the Sashimi City palette, which is a really stunning, more of course neutral palette, and it also only has 6 shades. These are like my perfect kind of everyday neutrals. They're very desaturated, almost like pastel leaning. They're a bit like of a somewhat rose, they're not rosy, don't have any pink in them, but it's just like kind of like desaturated neutral that I really love. It does have two perfect transition shades for me, two perfect shimmer shadows. I really love those two shimmers. These two browns are quite similar, so maybe I would like try to franken this one to like be a lighter brown. And then this one be the darker one, but that's something that would have to happen later on if I do end up panning this one. But since it's only 6 shades, I definitely think I could be able to pan this whole palette to completion. So definitely something that is a pro in that sense. And I think this would also be a very good go-to everyday palette for me whenever I just want to do a simple look. So yeah, definitely one that I think I would enjoy quite a bit. But it might be a little bit more boring to watch since it is a bit smaller. But yeah, I don't know. Let me know. It's definitely, again, one of my favorite palettes. But I feel like I have these tones so much in my collection now that I would definitely be ready to pan this one as well if you want to see it. Then we are moving on to brand number 2, and that is Odin's Eye. I do have quite a few Odin's Eye palettes in my collection now, but there's 2 specifically that I would like to pan, and they are my 2 oldest Odin's Eye palettes. The first one out of those is my Elva palette, which is the larger as well. This one has 16 shades, but it is a really stunning palette. It does in some way have similarities to the last palette I talked about, but of course this one is way larger, and it also is a bit more rosier, but it is again those kind of desaturated colors. It does have a couple deeper shades, but it doesn't go that deep either, which is another pro for me. And the shimmers in here are so stunning. I love the shimmers in here and I would love to work on them. It does also have these 2 yellow shades here, which also switches up the color story a little bit. And yeah, I think I could go through most of this palette, and there's not that many mattes, so I feel like I could rotate through those and get through all of them, hopefully. Maybe not all of these, like these 3 deepest shades, or maybe this one, but like these 2 shades, maybe not. Or maybe, you know, biting off too much to chew when I'm saying that I can get through the whole palette, but I'm pretty hopeful. Some of the shimmer shades in here are rather similar, especially like these 2 shades, but since they are more easy, like everyday lid kind of shades, maybe even in the corner shades, I think I could go through both of those. So this is definitely a good contender if you guys want to see a palette that I can completely finish. And yeah, I think again I would really enjoy this one as like a more everyday type of palette. So that is option number 3. So second palette from Odin's Eye, if you are familiar with my collection, which I also picked up at the same time as the Elva palette, is this one right here, which is the Red Dragon palette. This one was in collaboration with Judy. It was from like the legendary Diversa palette collection, I think that's what it's called. But yeah, this is a really beautiful color story. It does have 12 shades in it, and this one is definitely, again, kind of like a neutral palette with some pops of colors, and it does lean a little bit warmer, but it still has these kind of like desaturated neutrals. Again, you can see a theme. I really like those. They're a little bit like brighter than just plain old boring neutrals, but they are still very wearable to me. There is a couple shades in this palette though I don't think I will be able to get through. Majority, like this bottom row, I don't think I will be able to pan those ones fully. This shade here, for example, I have had in my pan of eyeshadows and I used it 20 times. I did use it as a blush though, which is something that I continue doing if I pan this palette, because I did really enjoy it as a blush. But you do use like the tiniest amount that way though. So, you know, I don't think I could finish these 3. Who knows though. But apart from that, if I remove that, I do think the rest of the palette I could get through in a year, and these are really beautiful shades. Like honestly, if I remove those, this palette just looks so appealing to me, and I do really feel like I would be able to pan majority of palettes. There is these shimmers in here are really stunning. There's not that many shimmers though, so more mattes than shimmers, which is maybe a little bit of a downside because they take longer for me to pan. But it also would mean that I could dip into some of my indie shimmers more, which would be really fun. So yeah, that is definitely something to consider as well. And anything else to say? It does have like these kind of pops of green, which I do really like. These kind of peachier shades. So a lot of like versatility in this palette, but still leaning towards the more everyday compared to some of the brighter palettes that I might be discussing. But I think this one is a good happy medium between a neutral and a colourful palette. So we have 3 more palettes to go, and the next 3 are kind of very similar type of palette because they are mini palettes. So the first one we have is from Charlotte Tilbury. This here is the Exaggerate Bigger Brighter Eyes Filter Quad, which again has 4 shades. This is one that I have not really used that much in my collection, but I think this one would be something that is quite easy to pan. I do, though, from what I've seen from other people's videos, know that these pans are extremely deep, but since it's only 4 shades, I do think you can completely pan it. It would be an easy palette to incorporate with other things, so I could use this one as like a base for a lot of looks, and then, you know, play around with my enormous like singles collection of beautiful shimmers or other palettes, stuff like that. It only does have 1 matte, but it's a really nice crease shade I can build up, so I can use it in a lot of ways, I think. And this one is a bit more of a topper shadow, even though it's not like the most amazing topper shade, but I could reach for it with a lot of other shades. And then these two right here, I think I can reach for as a base for the shimmers. This one could be an any corner highlight, this one could be all over the lid. So again, I think this one would be quite versatile. Again, not the most exciting palette, but I think it's something that I could quite easily pan. And just as like I talked in the last video when I went through my Natasha palettes, if you haven't seen that, check it out again. But I would potentially also be willing to pair this one with another kind of mini palette if you guys would like to see it. If so, let me know your ideas and everything down below. But this is the next option, and yeah, let me know if you would like to see this one. I think I would really enjoy it, especially if I combine it with something else, or again with single shadows in my other projects. Then the last 2 options that I have, I'm going to talk about kind of together because they're from the same brand and they're both mini palettes. And these are palettes that I could, for example, pair with the Charlotte Tilbury quad, or these 2 together, or again pan them on their own and mix in other things that I have talked about, or my singles. So that is Rowan. We have 2 Rowan quads right here. I only have 2 in my collection. The first one we have is the 75 degrees quad. So I'm going to roll some footage of this one. This is one that is all shimmers. It has 4 beautiful shimmer shadows. So I could pair this one again with other shades. I could also, you know, pull in mattes in other projects to pan with this one. But I think this one would be a really fun one to use. And I honestly haven't really reached for these Rowan quads much at all. So it would almost be to pan them from scratch, and I think it would be fun for me to play with the formula of this. Also, another thing to consider is that the Rowan kind of formula I would assume is prone to drying up because it's more of that kind of cream formula. So these probably have a little bit of a shorter shelf life than some of the other things in my collection. So that is something that makes me want to reach for these a bit more. So that is the first one out of the 2. So that you can either vote for this one on its own with another mini palette that I've spoken about, or in combination with the next one, which is this one here. And this is the Eyes on Me quad. Again, I'm rolling the footage of what this one looks like. This one actually has a matte shade in it, so that is going to be a bit interesting, and you know, something that I can use with other shades. So it's a bit more similar to the Charlotte Tilbury quad, but these shades are definitely way more like warm toned and orange leaning. The other palette is also a little bit more warm toned, but putting them next to each other, they are definitely way more cool toned. So looking at them, let's see, this one here is the Rowan 75 degrees, and this is the Eyes on Me quad. So you can see the tonal difference. But this palette again would be one that would be really fun to pan. Again, it has 3 shimmers. This one looks a bit more, feels a bit more like a regular powder, although I think it probably is a bit creamier too. But these 2 are definitely cream shadows, so would be quite interesting again to pan. This palette I've reached for I think even less than I have the 75 degrees, and it is newer as well, so I'm not as urgent with panning this one, but I wanted to include it anyway because if you guys wanted to see it, I would be happy to pan it. I think you have like these 2 more everyday shimmers, and then you have this really like burnt, rusty kind of shimmer that I could again use as a base for other things, or wear like as a smoky eye on its own. And I think this matte is quite buildable. You can sheer it out or build it up without the corner. So again, another versatile matte, even though this one is definitely more warm tone and not as neutral as the Charlotte Tilbury quad. But that is the last palette that I have to talk about, so let's go through the options again. We have the Eyes on Me quad from Rowan, and then the 75 degree quad also from Rowan. Yeah, these two again separately or together or with something else, let me know. Those are the first two options. We then have the Charlotte Tilbury Bigger Brighter Eyes Filter Quad, so that is the next. We had the two Odin side palettes. We have the Red Dragon palette, which was in Glowing with Judy, and then the second Odin side palette we have is the Elva palette, so that is the next two. And then the final two palettes in this selection, we have the Kaleidos Sashimi City palette and the Club Nebula palette, also from Kaleidos. So those are palettes for this video, and the last palettes that I'm considering for my Pana palette this year. Make sure to cast your votes down below. I will be very excited to see what the last selection would be. And again, I will leave it another week or two after this video is posted to film my next round, which will be up in beginning of December. But in the meantime, I hope you guys are having an absolutely fantastic day wherever you are, and I will catch you in my next one. Bye guys!